Merse Kollo, welcome to Radical Wealth Plan again.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back.
So I brought you back for a very specific reason, and that is that I had the absolute pleasure of being on Money Rehab, which is Nicole Lappin and Money News Network, and they're helping with our show. They're doing
Awesome.
They're doing great. One of the things about Nicole is she can be a little tough, which that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But, we were talking about rent versus own. That's a slightly different subject. But one of the stats that she pulled out was that the S&P 500 over a long period of time has performed at about a 10% rate of return. And then she looked at housing or real estate and said, look, you're looking at about a 4.5% return. And the time periods were slightly different, but not in as meaningful a way as to debunk that data. Let's just say that data is solid.
Okay.
There are some very specific added benefits to do it with your own house. You can get into it. You can get into this investment being your own home, at better rates, with less money down and all that sort of thing. So you can add a decent amount of leverage without bankruptcy because you're offsetting rent. So even leaving that aside, if we had an investor, let's just say it doesn't matter what the amount is $100,000, couple $100,000, and they want to invest in something. The argument essentially that she is making is, you throw it in the S&P index, you get 10%, and you throw it into real estate, you get 4.5%. So my answer for her, I would say was, I'd give myself a B to a B minus.
Okay.
Now I have you. We get to move from B minus to A plus.
Hopefully, not down to a C. Hopefully,
that's correct. So I want to ask you, because you represent developers. Okay?
For the most part, yes.
Correct. Yeah. So I know you have a big practice, but
it's a big part of it is developers. Yeah.
Okay. So now your investor, and I'm going to use a specific area because you're working Mar Vista right now. I know you move different areas, but you've got several developers for Mar Vista.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you underwrite the deal. They're going to make 4.5% cash on cash, and their answer is,
he's not doing the deal at 4.5% return. There is no way.
Not
even close. There is no way.
Okay.
There is no way. It's not even a deal. Yeah. No.
Okay. Now, if your cash on cash is 10%, what's the answer?
No. Still no at that point. No way. You're far away.
Okay. So to put real numbers on that, for your Mar Vista developers, cash on cash, how long are they holding a deal?
12 months.
12 months.
12 months.
Okay.
Some 8, depending, but usually anywhere between 8 to 12 months. Mm-hmm. Maybe 15 if you're pushing it. But best case scenario 8, worst case scenario is probably 15. So let's just say 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's right in the middle.
12 months.
Yeah, 12 months.
What kind of return are they getting? Cash on cash?
Cash on cash, they are at least in the 70% annualized cash on cash. On a development deal, ground up construction, at least 70% on your money. But 100%, doubling your money, 100% return is not unheard of. There is a lot of projects out there that you can look at today. That's 100% return.
So if I come to you and I say, hey, I want to do a Mar Vista, it doesn't have to be Mar Vista for me.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I come here and go, hey, you know what? Don't call me. Okay. Don't call me until you get me a 75% cash on cash return. Goodbye. How soon do you call me back?
2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on where the market is, the turnover rate and everything else. But in an area that's hot, probably 2 weeks to 4 weeks, if not less, if I'm lucky. But 2 to 4 weeks, that's something I would commit to. Okay. I would say I can probably bring you one of those deals in 2 to 4 weeks. Mind
blown. Okay, because I needed Merse Kollo to come as my backup to help me with that question, because I wasn't even looking at it, like real developer. And let me ask you, so you say 2 to 4 weeks you can bring me that deal. Let me lower the bar a little bit. Okay.
2 to 4 weeks, I'll get a deal.
No,
okay, I'll get a deal. Who we are taking it to? Since you're a new developer, you called me, you said you would move on this. I would probably try to establish a relationship and bring it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me lower the bar a little bit more and say, you know what? I want 50% cash on cash. Are those deals plentiful?
Those are out there. I don't want to say you walk into those every day, but they're out there. The problem is that you have a benchmark. When you're benchmarking it to a deal that's 75%, 80%, 100% on your money, then 50% sounds great, right? If we compare it to the S&P 500, sounds amazing, but in real estate terms, it may not be that great as far as opportunity cost goes. Because you could wait out for the deal that gives you the 100% return if you're willing to wait.
Okay. All right.
But if you're okay with the 50%, you're cranking them out. Yeah, those are out there.
Yeah. But I'm talking about, so you're talking about.
See, it gets layered, you know what I mean? But I guess your point is whether you can beat what would you say, 10% S&P 500 on average as an active real estate investor? Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So with the opportunity of some research, I'm not a stock guy, right? Yeah. So I found this index called SPIVA, and what SPIVA stands for is it's an index. It's the S&P index versus active investor. So that's what SPIVA is. S&P index versus active investor. And what that means very simply is if you have a passive fund, if you buy $100,000 of the S&P index fund, nobody is saying put your money here or there or wherever. They're saying, you've got a little piece of it all. An active investor is going to try and cherry pick. They're going to use all the knowledge information that they have to cherry pick those numbers. So Nicole's numbers are correct, and that is when you look on a national average for whatever time frame she looked at, and I did check it out. It's not a bad time frame. Last 15 years, real estate as a whole has gone up 4.5%. So it's just like, that's true. And the S&P index as a whole historically has gone up 10%. That's also a true fact.
Let me challenge that, by the way, the S&P 500. Because if you're talking about the S&P 500, you're already talking about the 500 biggest companies, right?
Yeah.
When you're looking at real estate as a whole in the United States, you include Beverly Hills in there, and you also include Tennessee.
That's
so
correct.
A fair comparison would be, okay, S&P 500 is 500 companies, right? In the S&P 500. So and that's probably the best performing biggest companies. Then let us pick 500 of the best areas appreciation wise in the United States. That's a fair comparison. It's not a fair comparison.
Yeah. That's an excellent point that I hadn't even thought of.
You see what I'm saying? So if you want to compare it fairly, look at the stock market as a whole. Mm-hmm. Maybe take up pin sheets and all that stuff that are listed on the NASDAQ, S&P 500, everything, and then compare it to the real estate market. I guarantee that to you that number is way less.
That's another great point is that, S&P 500 is already in a way cherry picked. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the SPIVA is the S&P index versus active investors. So the S&P index is a passive investment, which just means you put your money into the S&P 500 and, you do nothing. You don't cherry pick between those stocks. Now you get the active investors. And one of the things that we talked about before I checked the actual math was, that we had this belief because of news we read or whatever, that survey says active investors actually cannot beat the, if you take 100 investors, some of them are going to guess right and some of them are going to guess wrong, but over time you figure it out, and that the active investors over time cannot beat the S&P 500. And that was our guess. But now I have the real answers to that.
Okay.
When I looked at the actual numbers made my head explode because, you would think that even if they're no good at it at all, that they would beat the S&P 500 50% of the time statistically, and that they would underperform 50% of the time. And the real numbers are that over a 20-year period of time, including the biggest funds and the ones that have really professional stock pickers, active investors, over a 20-year period, 91% underperformed. And I'm like, you'd have to try to be bad. Like, how's that even possible? And the answer to that is that in a frictionless world where there was no cost to buy and sell, that it's really the friction that's causing them to do worse than 50-50. But maybe, but it certainly doesn't bring them, but it's not a frictionless world. So 91% are actually underperforming.
That's an interesting number. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was 91%. It does make sense. I also think you have to think about fees that are included in there. So every time you trade, you have a fee that's included in there. Also, I think there's a lot of noise that it's very difficult to tune out in the market. I also think that if you're an active investor and if you're, if most of them are probably smaller companies or mom and pops, you don't have the same data available to you as the big guys. I think there's a lot of moving parts there that create a not really even playing field. And I don't even think if you could create an even playing field there.
And really the statistics are showing that the biggest players that have the most data, that have the most edge, as they call it, are underperforming the S&P 500.
I believe it. Yeah.
And to which somebody would say, real estate transactions are far from frictionless too. You're paying Merse on the way in. He brings you a great property. You're going to pay Merse on the way out. There are transfer taxes. There's all these different things. And these investors are still getting 70, 80% cash on cash return after all costs. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's correct. After everything, interest costs, selling costs, closing costs, everything. That's all in there.
So the friction, so we really are comparing apples to apples because 91% are underperforming, but that's because of friction. And what we're saying is we can get 70, 80% return on investment. And so that's the piece, when I get done with this, I'm not gonna expect Nicole to watch the whole thing, but okay. I'm gonna
still 30 seconds.
Here's why.
Yeah.
What we were guessing before I did the research was that let's just say we know as a fact that on average real estate is 4.5%, and on average the S&P is 10. However, a bit of knowledge in real estate, or just aligning with somebody who has a lot of knowledge in real estate, moves you from 4.5% to conservatively 60% or 70%. And that even a lot of knowledge moves you essentially from 10% backwards.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yes. Yeah, that's very true actually. And also, I don't think in real estate we have that many. We do have external forces, obviously, but it's a much slower moving animal than the stock market. So it takes time for these forces to take effect and see where the market is really going. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen overnight, like in the stock market. Mm-hmm. In the stock market, you can get really burned overnight. Mm-hmm. You can get wiped out overnight. Mm-hmm. In real estate, it could happen. Everything, every investment you make is risky, but it's much less likely to happen in real estate. Some huge event that wipes you out completely. Mm-hmm. Like we can talk about the fire in the Palisades. That's something we could discuss. But how often do we have an event like that? Mm-hmm. You really don't.
And most people, certainly at the time before the fire, most people are covered by insurance.
Correct.
So you're getting, you're definitely not taking a whole loss for sure. And then, forgive my like up-to-date stock knowledge. So the last time that I really saw a price shock, I was just reading because I'm interested in AI. And so I'm reading about that anyway. And when DeepSeek, came out, NVIDIA's stock plummeted. Now, it's back up, but these are shocks that we see some shocks in the real estate market, but not like that.
Not quite like that. No, I don't even, other than the fire that we mentioned, I'm not even sure if there was anything like that overnight that maybe COVID, but even with COVID, it was a lot of uncertainty in the beginning. We didn't know how it was going to play out. Now, thank God for the interest rates, thank God the interest rates dropped. So that helped us out there. But other than that, I don't think you can see another event, can you? Mm-hmm. 08 took time too.
Yeah. Well, also, as bad as 08 was, it still recovered pretty quickly. And again, when you look at a market as a whole versus buying smart. So, and I'll give you an example. The average investor is walking into, the average shop and getting the average financial advisor, and they're buying whatever. And if it's not an index fund has less friction, because you could go to a discount shop. So here I am, and I'm certainly not qualified to give stock advice for sure. But, from the stuff I'm reading, it seems like it would make most sense to stay away from the, active investors, go to the least expensive shop where the buys and sells cost the least, and, buy the index fund and hold on. And that way you will at least very close to perform with the index.
I agree. I think that's probably for best. And again, I don't know enough about stocks to give anybody any advice, but I agree. The best thing you can probably do with stocks is buy an ETF and you hold it forever, and you keep buying into it, and eventually you cash out. But I think if you try, based on the numbers you're giving me, I wouldn't even try to do it actively.
Right?
For what?
Yeah.
I have a 90% chance of failing. 91% chance of failing. Yeah. That's crazy. Why would I go into something that I have a 91% chance of failing it? If I could go to somewhere else, I have way better chances.
Mm-hmm. The barrier between the average real estate investor breaking through and getting way more than 4.5% is so much easier than the average stock investor. How are they going to break through that wall and get over the 10% that they're just going to get anyway?
Yeah, I think that's, if the professionals are failing at that rate, then as an individual, I think you if you looked at individuals probably there who are not professional stock pickers, that 91% is probably closer to 98, 99, 97. It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah, it would, because the knowledge has got to be worth something.
Right.
Yeah. So that I think that's our answer. I'm gonna do one more thing. I'm gonna look at REITs. It's a touchy subject.
It's also because some people believe in real estate and that's all they believe in, and some people believe in stocks and that's all they believe in.
That was rolling, right?
Yes.
I think you should include that.
You think?
Yeah.
What?
Some people just believe in real estate.
That's really what it is. I have clients who buy houses because they want to live in it, but that's the only purpose for them to buy a house, or buy a vacation house because they like the area and they buy a vacation house. But they really have it in stocks, and that's what they understand, that's what they know, that's what they believe in, and that's what they do.
You had some other thoughts too about control, about tax advantage that we haven't even talked about. So hit those a little bit.
So I think that if you own a number of shares in a company that has millions of shares outstanding, how much control you really have over that company? Not much. You send in your vote and whatever happens, but you're really not controlling anything. If you own your own real estate, or whether it's an investment property as in a sense of it's a income producing asset or just a development play, whatever the case may be, you make your own decision there. You're in charge there. I think that's one thing. And I think that's attractive to a lot of people, to being able to manage their own money in a way, right? And be directly connected to the outcome of how much money they make, which you probably don't really have it in the stock market, really.
Mm-hmm. Again, I'm a little behind the news cycle, okay? But to your point, a Elon Musk offered the CEO of Apple a deal to do a deal with Starlink so that there'd be satellite coverage on iPhones, and CEO of Apple decided to go another route. And I think because of that, iPhone didn't jump further ahead of everybody with like real satellite coverage. Now, I don't know the ins or outs of that deal, and maybe Tim Cook was doing exactly the right thing. I have no judgment on it because I don't know enough about it. But that is what I think you're talking about, in the sense that now this CEO over whom you have zero control, because no matter how much money we have, it's never going to put any kind of a dent in a vote on anything. And that CEO makes a decision like, do we go Starlink or not Starlink? It makes a big difference. Now, when you own your own property, you're like, well, do I put in the granite countertops or do I put in the marble countertops? And then I'm going to ask my professional, and my professional say, well, you know what? The cost of marble versus granite in this particular neighborhood, you're not going to get the ROI. So let's go ahead. We'll go with granite. They're just the decisions inside of that company, not Apple, but inside of the company that is the one property that you sell to me. You and I are going to make some real informed decisions that we get to decide one way or another.
Right, and you're responsible for those decisions. If you're good at it, you'll make more money. If you're not, then it's probably not cost you money. But at least it's your own decision at the end of the day, and you're in charge of it. And we can take the conversation further on, let's say, just depreciation, something as simple as depreciation. And then you can play around with depreciation, with accelerated depreciation, no more depreciation, whatever fits your needs as far as taxes go. That's a big component. That's a huge component. And you own properties, you know how big of a saving that is on your tax returns. There is no way you can depreciate a stock. There is no way. But in real estate, you automatically get depreciation. And you can add, if it's an investment property, that anything you spend on that property, you're writing off on your taxes, mortgage payment, taxes, interest on the mortgage, everything that you pay. So you could have let's just make up numbers, a $250,000 income from your rental property, and you're writing $250,000 off, and you're not paying taxes on it. If you take that into account, see how much a stock would need to rise in price to even that out, because you pay capital gain taxes on it. Short-term, long-term, one way or another, you pay in either short-term or long-term capital taxes on it. In real estate, to the same point, you could do a 1031 exchange. Then you could sell your property that you bought 25 years ago for $1 million or $800,000, $1 million. That's worth $6 million today. You have a $5 million capital gain there. As long as you purchase another real estate property, you're fine. And you're not paying any capital gain taxes.
You roll it forward.
Now, to be honest though, if you want to cut this, I don't know. There may be a way to do that with stocks, no? Can you sell and buy another one right now? I don't know. There could be something like that.
I don't think there is, but
you can swap or something.
Yeah, the short answer is no. But they created a fiction, which is that you're creating a trust, and the trust is selling the property, and then the trust is reinvesting the property, so you're not getting the cash. But if I'm in my investment account and let's say I bought $500,000 worth of Apple stock, it's now worth $1 million. I'm less bullish on Apple, and now I want to deploy that money in Facebook. I sell that stock. I don't touch the cash at all. It stays in the account. I move it directly into Facebook. The government is going to hand me a bill for that exchange. So the answer is no. There is no equivalent of a 1031 exchange for the stock market.
So every time you sell, you're subject to either short-term capital gain or long-term capital gain. In real estate, we don't have that. As long as it's an investment property, I can just keep rolling it into the next one. And
so really the key point is reinvesting proceeds from the stock market does not defer taxes, period.
But in real estate, it does. Yeah.
And that's a big, and frankly, I've been investing in real estate for 30 years and, interviewed this amazing investor, and he looks at my portfolio and he's like, what's wrong with you, dude? You should be in and out of these properties a lot more. And for me, in a way, really it's laziness. So like I find a good deal. I always buy value add. I find a good deal. I go value add, and then I just sit on it. It just sits and sits and sits and sits. And, and when you look at the overall long-term gain in that property, it's great. And then my loan to value starts to go down, and I've got more security, and this whole thing feels great. It looks great. I don't touch my portfolio, and I turn around and, it's gone up a lot. It goes through cycles, but, overall it's gone up a lot. But this very sophisticated investor has got a lot more property, a lot more money than me, started out in New York, which is a little bit of an advantage. And he started with zero, to be clear. But, after he had made enough money that he invested $700,000 in one piece of property in New York, decades ago. I forget how many times he 1031 exchanged it, but that $700,000 was worth like $40 million. And he had not paid taxes on it. And every time he switched it, if you took the taxes out and now you've got less to invest in the next thing, and that eventually you're going to pay the taxes. But by being able to invest the whole amount of money, let me use the Apple example. So I have $500,000 worth of Apple stock. Over time, it doubles. Now I have $1 million worth of Apple stock. I sell that. I'm going to pay the long-term capital gain because I've held it for a while. And so I'm going to get clipped on that $500,000 gain. Now I've got less money to invest in Facebook. If you do the same transaction in real estate, so now I buy the piece of real estate, $500,000 worth, and now it's worth $1 million. I'm like, I want to deploy this into something else, which was my friend's advice, because I bought the value add, I added the value, then it's worth more. Then I held it a while. Then he would say, okay, now go ahead and get yourself a new value add, and redo that. Now, when I do that, I'm reinvesting. If we do the same math, 500 plus 500 gain, I now have $1 million to invest instead of the 1 million less the taxable amount.
Not only that, if you were smart and you held the property long enough, that $1 million that you're investing is not even your own money anymore. Because you refied, you pulled out your own cash, right? If you're smart, you refi, you pull out all the down payment that you put in there. So all the money that's in the property is really the bank's money. And what you're playing with is really the appreciation there. But no, it's not one of your own, not one of your own money, not $1 of your own money at a certain point.
Yeah. I was looking at, because I was doing a pro forma on one of the syndications that we're doing. And, after year 3, I'm projecting that we get all of the investors' money back, all of it. And then, yeah, we're less some of the assets. So in this particular one, there's 5 assets, and the largest one, they're not all the equal size, but we improve all of them. And then over the next 3 years, we got rid of, our pro forma is to get rid of 4 of them, but to keep the big one. And now the investors after year 3 have all their money back. And now we still hold the largest asset. Like how do you calculate that?
What kind of, is it an infinite return, or what is that at that point? Are we calling it an infinite return, or what is it? Because really that's what it is. Yeah. It's not even your own money. Another interesting point that we didn't touch on is dividends, right? Because a lot of stock guys will tell you that, hey, my stock pays dividends, but so does your investment property because you're collecting rent. And I don't know what, you can look this up, but I don't know how much dividend Apple is paying right now. For a long time, they weren't even paying dividends. But there is no way that if you look at the percentages, what you're collecting on your rent, what your rental income is, and if you measure it against the money that you put out, the percentage of dividend, if you want to call it, you're getting from a rental is definitely higher than what sort of dividend any sort of dividend you're getting from a stock.
You know what I didn't know? But it's the beauty of having it's the beauty of having AI open while we're having a conversation, is that this whole time, because my dad invested in real estate and did small time, did very well in the real estate, and he also was diversified. Again, he didn't have a lot of money, but he was diversified, and he really would invest in stocks that paid a dividend, and then they have what they call a DRIP, which is a dividend reinvestment program. And this whole time, I thought that that's the one way that, whatever the dividend is, they automatically reinvest it for you, and you would not have to pay taxes on that. But that is not true. I didn't realize until I just looked it up. So for example, Apple, I think Apple for a while was not even paying a dividend, but it did at some points in time. So if you buy a stock and actually I think he was buying United States Steel for a while. I wish my dad had lived to a very ripe old age, and I will tell you his portfolio of United States Steel would have been pummeled. So that didn't happen, but some of these stocks, paid a really good dividend and then got automatically reinvested. But what I just found out was if you got $1,000 dividend and it got immediately reinvested back in that stock, the IRS sends you a bill for the taxes on the $1,000.
And that's income tax. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
No, that's income tax. Yeah. Wow.
See, I
didn't know that. I thought that was tax free.
Yeah. I thought there was that
Yeah.
was the one thing. Okay. There are some differences. So qualified dividends, and I'm again not an expert. I'm reading it off of I'm reading it. I'm learning as I go, right along with everybody else. Unless they know it before we know it, which wouldn't surprise me. Qualified dividends, which most blue chip stocks are taxed at the long term capital gain rate, which does make sense because you're holding the stock a long time and it chips off this little dividend. It's not like you're earning the money in the short term. So at least they give you the qualified dividends, and ordinary non-qualified dividends are taxed at your regular income tax. So whatever it is, you're getting hit with that.
Interesting. So I think if you package all that up and pair it up with the tax benefits that you're getting with real estate and the cash flow that you could be getting and the returns being high, there is no way the two evens out. I just don't see it.
It doesn't.
I just don't see it.
It doesn't even out without all the things that you talked about. And let me talk about one deal that we just talked about in our last team meeting, and our buddy and colleague Eddie had a client wants to get rid of a property, just wants out, and the price of that property was $650,000, and Eddie said it needed $80,000 worth of repair. Furthermore, because Eddie's on it, right? He's like, and hey, Paul, if you want to buy it, or if you have a friend that wants to buy it or whatever, that $80,000 worth of repairs, like I have the guys that will do it. So like, this is not like, oh, we think it's 80 grand. He's like, no, you want to buy this thing? I'll make sure you get it done. The 80 grand covers everything that you need. So now we're in it for 730. And what was the exit that he said? Like 9 something?
950 or so, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, back to be
yeah, something
950.
like 950. Yeah. And the crazy thing about that is, I'm sort of jumping out of my seat. I have to admit, I'm writing it up on the board. What are the numbers? Okay, Eddie, I want to talk to you about that later. But the rest of the room is not jumping out of their seat. And, and you're representing developers, and you're not grabbing that deal from, wait a second. Eddie represents developers. So it's like Eddie's not calling his investors going, I have this great deal. This is smoking deal. Do this deal. But that's what I mean by, if you consult the right people, you can get that kind of a deal.
You could. And if you want, we can do the numbers on that deal. Because you gave me the numbers. We can do the numbers and see what it comes out to be.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
What I love about this is a real deal. This is not an if or whatever. This deal is on the table of 650. The other thing too is your investors that are getting 100%, or 80%, they are professional investors. So that's why I can't step up. Let's be honest. I can't step up to the plate and say, hey, Merse, give me your next deal. Cause now I have to know what I'm doing with it. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
So maybe that's not fair, but I'm going to we grab Eddie's deal.
Okay.
And he said, you can get it for $650, that it requires $80,000 in improvements. Eddie's going to give us the construction people that are going to do it. And they're going to bring it in at that 80 grand and it would be done in 3 months. And then what did he say? The ARV, which is after renovation value, $950. Oh, so let's start with the math of how much we're into it now. 650 plus 80, right? Mm-hmm. So you're at 730. And then 3 months later, okay. So we know now we'll talk about the friction. Okay. We know you now have a $220,000 profit.
Do you want the closing costs, no?
Yeah, let's do the closing costs because we're gonna have to sell it. He says it's worth $950. I believe him, but
he said it was worth $970. That's why I said $950.
Oh, okay, all right. What I was gonna do was say he said $950. Let's go $930 because we want to sell it fast. But he says $970, and he's reliable. But the reason why we're shading it down is because we want to build in a little cushion and we want to sell it quickly. Okay, so great. So now we're at $220. Now we'll have to do we have to go to our escrow officer, or you're going to give me a round?
No, let's say $950. Just take 6%. You're paying 5% commission and 1% closing cost probably. So just take 6% off the top. So $950.
Well, let's just do $60,000.
All right, let's do 60 grand. Okay.
Because that's 6% of $1 million. So that'll give us a little more cushion. So 60,000. So now we're at basically 160,000 profit.
Yeah. And you put out 730.
Yeah. So that's a 22% return, except for we're going to, and I'm going to, again, he says 3 months, but that's including time to sell it, at least 4 months, at least.
Yep.
So let's call it, look, if we said 6 months, okay, then you take the 22% and you're making 22% cash on cash in 6 months, which is 44%. Mm-hmm. And that's a deal that Eddie in our meeting is a throw out. And, and Merce's partner, Griffin's not going oh my God, give me that deal. I got to send this to my person. They're going, yeah, go ahead, have at it. I'm saying that sounds good. Now let's throw a little leverage in. Leverage. You're telling me we could lever at 90%, which would make the return explode. But let's be more conservative and say you've got your 730, that's your 650 plus $80,000, right? So now you go 730. Divided by 2. So that's going to be for $365,000 cash. Okay. And then what's your holding cost on the 365? Even if you go
I go high?
Yeah, go high.
Let's do a blended, let's just keep it simple. Do a blended 10%. Because you're going to pay more on the rental budget than what you're going to pay on the purchase. So let's do a blended 10, which sounds about right. Maybe a tiny bit high, but it sounds about right.
So you're talking about, well,
you said 50% leverage?
Yeah.
So 730 is my total. I'm borrowing divided by 2. You're borrowing about this 365?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're borrowing 365. You're putting down 365. On the 365, you said 6 months? Let's call it 6 months. So that's what you're using the minimum. So on the 365, I would pay 36,500 over a year, right? At 10%, but I'm only doing it for 6 months.
So it's 18,000.
Let's call it 18,000 that I'm paying there. 18,000 in interest.
That's rounded up. Let's round everything up. 20,000 interest.
20 in interest, right? But I only put out 365 plus my 20.
Yep.
Right. So there's 385. your profits were, I believe, what, 220?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do the math.
Yeah. So now basically we're 950 minus 385. And let me say that out loud. $950,000 minus the 365,000 that you have to put down.
Well, let's say I sell it for 950 minus my cost. What was my cost? My 365, right?
Correct.
That I put down plus the 20 that I paid.
Right.
So that's my cost. So I'm all in 385 here. Minus 385, right?
So in the all cash deal, you have 950 and you had $160,000 profit after your cost of sale.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we put 950 in. So now we put 365 in. And now I think what you do is you reduce the 160 by the interest, and we're rounding the interest up, and let's say the interest cost is 20 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So now your profit goes from 160 down to 140. That's the easy way to look at it. So our all-in cost is still 365, but our profit gets reduced by $20,000 because we had to pay interest, and so our total profit is now 140. So you've got 140 over 365.
Well, 385 because I paid because that's my money out. So I put 385 down or 365 down, but I paid 20K in interest.
Yeah, but I took the interest out
of the profit. Okay, that's fine then. Yeah.
Yeah, 38%.
38%.
But that's a half a year. So now you're at your 76%.
76%. And this is not even a great deal. This is not even a great deal.
So
a good developer, what they would do here, an experienced one, they would put down 10% of the purchase price, maybe 15, but at these prices, they will let you get away with 10% of the purchase price, and you borrowing 100% of the rental budget.
So essentially, you're putting down $65,000. Then you're funding the reno budget, which is 80 grand yourself.
No. They give that to you.
Oh.
The lender gives you the rental budget, 100% of it.
Oh, I see. So you're putting down 65
grand, but I'm really borrowing 730 minus the 65 is what? Is 665. Okay. Loan is 665. Now I'm paying, let's use the same numbers. You're paying 10% on this. So 665.
So it's going to be $66,000, which again, rounded up to 70,000, and then cut it in half.
So 30.
You're borrowing for half a year.
So 35, right? So that's 665 plus 35. I'm lending exactly at 700.
Okay, so now we take our $160,000 profit, and we reduce that by. How much are we paying in interest again?
So 665 plus 35. So you're paying 700 grand all in for that loan.
But how much interest we're paying? We're paying 35,000. Okay,
35.
So another way to look at it is our net profit cash on cash was 160, and then you take your 160 minus your 35,000 in carry cost, and that takes the profit down to $125,000. But now your $125,000 is over top of a $65,000 investment.
You doubled your money.
Yeah, you doubled your money, and you doubled your money in half a year.
In 6 months. Yeah.
I personally wouldn't do that. It's just I would throw some real cash into it, but
it depends on your nature as an investor. Do you use a lot of leverage? Do you not use a lot of leverage? It really depends what sort of business model you have. Okay. A lot of people would do it in cash and be happy with the 22% return, or in 6 months, which is really 44. Some people may do the 50-50 and take the 38% in 6 months, which is over year over year, 38 times 2, 74, 76.
My brain.
76.
I'm real good at math in my head until it gets late. So 38 was 50% leverage. 90% leverage was the 200. And then what was the 44% is the zero leverage. Okay, so now we take this deal, we've underwritten it basically, and if we put all cash in, we're gonna get 22% return on our money in 6 months. That's a 44% return. If we are conservative like me, then you put 50% down, and then you're getting 38% in 6 months. And remember, it's not gonna take 6 months. And remember, we rounded the interest way up. So these are very, very conservative numbers. And we took the purchase price and we rounded that down. So these are conservative numbers. And we would be at a 76% if you wanted to be more conservative like I am. And then if you want to be more aggressive and put down 10%, then you're all the way up to 200%. And it's still a deal that like Eddie puts up and, people aren't jumping at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call Nicole. For real. I'm going to tell Nicole, hey, I want to do a deal with you. What you and I, we're going to crush the S&P 500 and we're going to buy Eddie's deal. Let's see what she says.
Let's see which one does better.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Because especially in this deal, there's so much room for error. I mean, we built in a lot of room for error. We say, hey, Eddie says 970. We trust him. We round it down to 950. We go, oh, it's going to take 4 months, 3 months to finish, 1 month to sell. We go, forget it. Let's make it 6 months. Oh, we can borrow the money at 10% blended. We rounded those numbers up to probably what ended up to be about 12% blended. Yeah.
Yeah. And it still works. And you hit the 100% I said early on, remember? Even on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's freaking go.
Yeah, let's do.
Merse, thanks for walking us through a deal, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope to be back.
That was very solid.